Hello and welcome to Teenagers Untangled, the award-winning audio hug for parents going through the teenage years. I'm Rachel Richards, parenting coach, mother of 2 teenagers and 2 bonus daughters.
Hi there, I'm Susie Asley, mindfulness coach, mindful therapist, musician and mother of 3 teenagers. 2 of them are twins.
Now, Susie, we recently talked about charging our teens rent if they're living at home. Yeah. And I know that some of our parents who are just starting out on this journey might think it's not for them, but I would argue that looking ahead to what our teens might become later on, it's actually quite helpful because it gives us a better sense of what we're trying to achieve, doesn't it? It was a real eye-opener for me because I thought I didn't realise how much attitudes actually varied around the world. And we've had some great feedback from parents who have teens at home. One mum charges rent and has regular meetings where she goes through the household bills. And one lady said that she doesn't charge rent for her son. He's doing an apprenticeship. He's paying for his own transport and lunches. Mm-hmm. Another listener contacted me to say she has a friend who complains about how exhausted she is and has a son who's doing an apprenticeship. She wakes him up in the morning, makes him breakfast, irons his clothes, pretty much does everything. Yeah. And I mean, I would say in that situation, maybe she needs to set some more boundaries if she's struggling with, you know.
Yeah, if she's struggling with it, if that's not sitting well, it's all about how it is for them. Isn't it?
Anyway, listener Katie told me it's a transition point for her. She's muddling through. Her daughter is at work until odd hours and travel safety is a worry where that's concerned. So they don't suddenly turn into adults, do they? I think that's what we've realised. And
so disappointing.
Yeah, I know. like overnight, open the door. No, they're still a teenager. So we don't stop being concerned as parents.
No, and it's also nice. It's a really nice transition time, I think.
Yeah, so it's just trying to work out how we transition. So I think we'll talk a bit about that today. Yeah. We'll talk about the types of parenting, the styles of parenting that we engage in when they're younger and how that can actually pan out and how we can adjust it as they get a bit older.
Nice. So it sounds like you've got some categories.
Ooh, I have.
Yay.
But we'll do that in a minute. Let's talk nuggets. Do you have one for us?
I do. I have quite a funny one. Oh, well, I think it's quite funny. I was talking the other night at dinner and my partner was there and my 2 twins, so my eldest is away at uni at the moment, and they were talking about the podcast. We were all talking about the podcast and they were like, what do you actually say? Because they don't listen to it.
Oh, I love it.
What do you say about us?
What do you listen?
Yeah, I did say that, but they wanted a quick version.
Fair enough.
Are you slagging us off? And then my youngest boy decided it would be a really great idea to set up a rival podcast. So he's going to cook up.
I love it.
I
love it. Game on.
Podcast. My partner jumped in on this, so they're going to do it together. I mean, whether it actually happens will be a whole other story. But it was very funny conversation about what they're going to include, and it's gonna kind of knock us out the park.
Love it.
I thought it was great.
I'll listen.
Me too.
I think there's a gap. There's a gap there. We want men and young boys.
And
right?
They both talk a lot of rubbish, so I can't wait to hear it.
Well, we will let you know when it finally launches.
Brilliant.
I love that. My nugget this week is to do with what we're talking about this week. And it's about the way that we transition our kids from being young kids that have everything done for them to people who are making a good contribution in the household. And we had somebody write in and say, look, I'm struggling with my kids because every time I try and get them to do things, it just turns into an argument. Oh, you did this and I'm not doing that. And I said, why don't you just completely reframe the conversation and talk in terms of teams? And when it comes to teams, we don't all do the same thing. We're bringing different qualities into a team. So I always start with myself and I say things like, well, I've just planned a meal, I shopped, I cooked the meal. So what are you going to do for the team? And let them come up with suggestions. Because I've often found that if I try and tell someone to do something and that's not what they're good at, they just won't want to do it or they'll do it badly, just deliberately to not have to do it. And, I found my husband's actually really good at drying up.
I love that.
Yes. And one of them comes in and she always likes to lay the table.
Yeah.
The other one, yeah, right. So we're not.
Amazing. I love that. I'm going to try that.
It really works. And I think then they get to choose. So there's less resistance. And they realise that they're an important part of this.
And you're a part of a whole rather than doing mum a favour.
Yes, exactly. And it moves the entire conversation on from them being children.
Yeah.
You've now started to treat them with respect. And what do teens love? Bit of respect.
Yeah. Amazing.
So,
yes. Love it.
Before we move on to actually talking about parenting, Susie, you have a review that we've just had. Would you like to read it out?
Yes. So the review is lovely, and she writes, "Thank you so much for following back. I listened to your show on Spotify. I love your approach. Thank you for guiding me through parenthood. Keep up the good work. Your podcast is the best I have come across, with 3 love hearts." And that's from a lovely lady called Eleni. So thank you so much for that.
That is amazing. The best.
The best.
Maybe she doesn't listen to other podcasts.
Maybe. Don't. Just keep us.
Yay. Okay, so coming back to parenting and how we move towards our teens becoming fully fledged adults, I want to touch on some of the parenting styles that are common in earlier years. And if you think back to our first episode, do you remember how we talked about how parenting exists on a spectrum? And you can have almost like 2 sliders. One of them's love. So how much of love do you show, and how are your rules set?
Oh yeah, I remember.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So yes, so it's going to be different for everybody, But we love a little category, don't we?
We do.
So I'm not going to go back to that because you can actually listen to that one. Yeah. But there are some terms that I thought were fun. One of them is a free-range parent. Have you heard that one?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're a free-range parent.
Am I?
Tiger parent.
I like to think I am. I'm probably not.
But you see, these things, there are different types of free-range parents. But anyway, tiger parent, bulldozer parent, and a helicopter parent. I know there are lots of different types, but here's 4 that I think are fun. I'm going to say that none of them are wrong and none of them are right or necessarily bad or good. They can have benefits. They can also cause problems. What I'd like to do is focus, let's just show you what they are. So a free-range parent tends to be more permissive. They allow their kids freedom to make mistakes, explore, try new things without too much guidance, and they believe kids can learn problem-solving skills through trial and error. They're convinced natural consequences are some of life's best teachers.
Oh, yes, that's me.
That's you. Exactly.
Sometimes. Usually.
Tiger parents push their kids to succeed with strict rules, regimented lifestyle that emphasizes hard work over fun. And we know that's come over from a more Asian culture.
Yeah. Typically.
I don't think many of those parents are actually listening to this podcast.
Because we're too chaotic.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, and then there's helicopter parents who keep hyper-vigilant eye on everything their child is doing, both to help them and protect them. And then the bulldozer parents are on the other end of that kind of protection spectrum. They're actually mowing down all the obstacles that threaten their kids. Yeah. So I saw a really good example of how you can sum these up. Let's say you've got a child who says they want to walk to the store alone.
Yeah.
The free-range parent will say, sure, can you pick up some milk while you're there? Mm-hmm. The helicopter parent would say, sure, I'll watch you all the way to make sure you stay safe. Mm-hmm. The bulldozer parent would say, sure, I'll walk ahead of you and make sure it's safe. You wait for me to tell you when it's safe to cross the road. Mm-hmm. The tiger parent will say, no, you need to practice your violin for another hour. Right?
Brilliant.
So now, what's happening in parenting is that we've shifted. I think there used to be more... Did it used to be more free-range parenting? I think parenting used to be more stand-back-ish. Yeah, not free-range necessarily, but stand-back-ish. And in the past few generations, our Western culture has increasingly encouraged parents to do things for their children that you could argue kids can do for themselves.
Yeah, and there's lots of reasons for that, aren't there? It's there's, the way society is and all of the different ways that school is run and all of that. And safety is. There's lots of reasons for it.
Yes, absolutely. And they all add up to a kind of general feeling about how you need to be a good parent. And the way to think about it is we've moved potentially from caring for our children to caretaking. Mm. And the question is, how does that impact them? Now, many parents find themselves solving problems for their children long into adulthood if they're caretaking. And it's completely understandable. Many of us remember our own childhood pain. We empathize with our kids when they come home crying because nobody likes them. There'll be reasons why we feel that we need to step in. And so let's just come back to this 2 caretaking parenting styles that I think are quite interesting, like a helicopter parent and a bulldozer parent. Mm. The term for the helicopter parent was first coined in 1969 in a book titled Between Parent and Teenager. They tend to pay extremely close attention to their kids' activities and schoolwork. And what they're trying to do is protect and help them. Mm. Now, college administrators have used the term a lot to refer to parents who continue to try and watch over their kids when they've got to college.
Yes.
Why do parents do this?
I mean, I definitely recognise it. And even though I would categorise myself as free range, I think we overlap, and it depends on the kid and the context and the situation.
Interesting.
It overlaps always. We're never one or the other.
No, exactly. And that's why we talk about a sliding scale. And I think we vary enormously. We're just trying to simplify it a bit, but certainly. Yeah. And I think the parents do these things because, first of all, probably they want to give their children the best and potentially what they've never had. Social pressure. Parents frequently think if their child is not doing well at something, it's going to reflect badly on them. They want to feel needed. Yeah. Because that comes into it. And a lot of parents who find it hard to let go quite like that role of being loved and needed. And also fear of your child getting hurt. Yeah, fear of them crashing and burning. Like you get all these dreadful stories of if your kid doesn't get these grades, if that's what you think is important, then this is what will happen or not happen. Yes. And it's fear, isn't it? And I think we have noticed, interestingly, when we talked about teenage delinquency, there's this malaise, this fear that our society is getting more dangerous. But in actual fact, they are behaving themselves far better and exposing themselves to far less, conventional danger than they used to. Yeah. But there are other knock-on effects of that. I often see helicopter parents in terms of like grades and school and sort of over-helping in that area. And I think there's a lot of fear around that. Yes. Like, am I a helicopter parent? Are you deeply involved in your kids' lives to the point where your own activities and interests completely take a backseat? So, and maybe even the family budget is skewed towards, them and their needs. A tendency to overschedule your kids in an effort to give them a competitive edge in everything. And you might even try to manage your child's friendships and their social standing. So these are the sorts of things that might identify you as a helicopter parent. And there's so many grey areas. So many grey areas. Because I think all parents would relate to all of those to some extent. And it's a lot of greys. It's interesting. Yes. And most helicopter parents wouldn't necessarily see what they're doing as in any way bad because they're looking after their children. And that's really important, isn't it? It's the intention behind what they're doing. It's coming from a really loving place, and maybe it comes out in a way that is not so helpful for the kid always. Well, it can be incredibly positive. So here are the positives. Their children arrive on time, they have their homework done, they're prepared for their activities, they have lots of support and guidance. These parents are often the people who are first to volunteer at school. They're in the PTA. And, we benefit in a community often from what these parents are doing. Yeah, and these kids feel secure and safe with that, don't they? I guess to a certain age, and then maybe if they want to, it depends on how it's done, doesn't it? Because, you want your kid to feel safe and secure, and you want to do the things that help them feel safe and secure. So there's nothing wrong in that at all. Nothing wrong at all. So, there are real benefits to this. The bulldozer parent, these are well-intentioned parents who, they want a smooth, obstacle-free path for their children, and they'll intervene at the slightest sign of difficulty or distress. So this can include resolving conflicts on their behalf, completing tasks for them. I knew kids like that. Influencing decisions to guarantee their success. Now, did you see that college scandal in the US where the parents actually paid to get their kids into colleges, sometimes without their kids' knowledge? Crazy. I mean, that bit, the last bit, without their kids' knowledge is just nuts, isn't it? It's incredible. And it's college age. Yes. And these people, they may be doing the kids' chores, they're fixing all their problems. The roots of this kind of bulldozer parenting, again, it's increased competitiveness in education and the job market. So the parents are trying to do everything they can to give their kids a leg up. Which makes total sense. It's really logical and really understandable. It makes total sense. It's very damaging to society. And to the kids. Yes. I mean, I watched the Varsity Blues scandal on Netflix and it was fascinating. We all just went, I've not seen that. Watch it. It's really entertaining and quite horrible. But it takes away their agency, doesn't it? It does. All of that. That's exactly that. So why does it matter? There's a lack of self-advocacy and problem-solving skills. So these kids, if you step in too much, they don't get the chance. They have to have the opportunity to gain clarification, to ask questions, to step in where, and to sort of listen to their inner voice and think, oh, I don't like this. And rather than coming back to you and getting you to do stuff, to learn how to do this. And it doesn't happen overnight.
No.
They need to practice it.
They do. And it can be, I think, because I recognise quite a lot of that, even though I see myself as not parenting like that. So I'm sitting here going, oh.
It's so interesting, isn't it?
It's really interesting. But there's so much grey in it. And it's, as you say, a practice. And it depends on the child. And it's practicing, giving them a bit of responsibility and making them feel like they are supported within that so that they then can take the reins the next time.
Yes.
And this is how you do it.
Yes.
Rather than, right, it was all yours now, bye.
Yeah, no, and that doesn't help anybody either, because they just feel completely lost.
Yeah, they're overwhelmed, yeah.
Absolutely. It can cause low self-esteem, because what you're really saying is you're saying they're not capable of handling it themselves.
Yes.
So that's definitely not what these parents are trying to do, but that could be the knock-on impact. It can then cause apathy, because if you feel that you don't have agency over your life, then what's the point?
Yeah, or that, mum will fix it. Dad will fix it. It doesn't really matter.
Yes. Reduced resilience, because they haven't practiced overcoming adversity. They don't really understand how to do it. And, if parents are stepping in trying to fix relationships, it can cause real problems in relationships, because they don't learn how to apologize. And this has been the big transition for my kids, where they said, you can't actually ask people around for a play date now. I actually have to do it myself. Because I used to do that when they were little. Yeah. They'd have an argument. I'd say, right, let's get them together. Yeah. They can play. They'll all like each other. Yeah. It's not like that.
No, you got to do that yourself.
They have to do it themselves.
But we can talk to them away from the situation and still support them and be really nurturing in that way, and then they have to do it themselves. Yes. Whereas the helicopter, I guess, would just go in and do it, wouldn't they? Or the bulldozer.
Well, the bulldozer would definitely just go in and fix it. The helicopter might spend all their time trying to micromanage it. Yeah. And what we can do is to sit by their side and just look at the problem and say, well, let them think through the problem. Like, how would I fix this? What can I do? And you can bounce ideas off them. So they've got another head. Yeah.
I guess what I'm sitting here thinking is that helicopter parenting and is next. The thing next door to it is doing nothing.
Yes.
And that's not right, isn't it? I think maybe that's how it's presented in society. Either you're doing everything for your kid and spoiling them, or you take your hands off the wheel completely. And then they have to do everything. And of course there's a whole massive buffer zone in between where we're helping and nurturing and supporting.
And I think that's the thing that parents are struggling with, because we're trying to think, so what, how do I be a good parent? Okay, I want to show them love and attention, but actually making that middle ground can be very, very difficult to find.
And it's boundaries, isn't it? It's like, this is my intention. I want, for example, I want my kid to feel safe. I want them to feel okay and resilient, etc. And this is what I will do with you, for you, and this is what you need to do yourself, and being clear on that, I guess.
Yes. So how do we encourage this transition, this autonomy in our children? We need to just try and start reasonably early, but it's never too late. And it's allowing your child to make some mistakes. Yeah. But rather than dropping them, like you said, if you just kind of let them get on with it, then they're really going to be stumbling and struggling. Yeah. So it's about...
probably feeling quite anxious because they're overwhelmed.
Yes. So it's about sitting side by side. They call it shoulder-to-shoulder parenting, where you look out together, like they have in therapy circles, where triangles, where you actually sit next to them, look out at the problem, and together you can actually brainstorm answers. Yeah. But that has to be done in an open communication way, non-judgmental, and then the kids feel that they're supported, but that they can go, and you just say, so you can go and do it, but this is how it might be done.
And maybe the first point of call is always the thing that I bang on about, which is like looking inside first, like, what is your need as a parent in this? Why do you want to behave in this way? Why do you want to fix it if that's what you want to do? Why do you want to make it easy for them? Is that because you're panicking, or you have a pain spot, a blind spot that you're unaware of? First unpicking that, and then you can be with them and be for them in a more authentic way that's probably a bit more helpful as well.
I think that's absolutely spot on. I think so often when we talk about anything in our episodes, it's looking inside and thinking, why am I feeling this way? Because it's so painful. When you see your child going through some form of trauma and you desperately just want to fix it because you experience it in a visceral way. Yeah. And we have to sit with that and be prepared to cope ourselves with not stepping in and fixing it all.
Learning to sit in the discomfort of the situation and unpicking that. Why is it uncomfortable? And can I sit with it? I mean, I had that experience with, and my eldest wouldn't mind me saying this, he had quite a bumpy A-level journey. And, I desperately wanted to jump in and fix it all, and I couldn't. And I probably went over the line a few times by supporting him, and I would do it again. I would feel okay with doing that. But I really sat myself down and went through the whole sort of the scenario in my head. Okay, if this happens, what? If this happens, what? If this happens, what? Can I sit with all of that? Yes, okay, it took a little while. Yes, I can sit with all of that. Whatever happens, he will be fine and I will be fine, and I can sit with all of it. Okay, now I can help you.
I love that. Yeah. So you've actually dealt with all the consequences yourself before you've had to be able to sit there and say, it's okay.
I'm not reacting. I'm not reacting from my own crap.
Yes.
I mean, I might be reactive in the situation, but it's not my own stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And teaching your children early on that being open with you is a good thing. I think it's fundamental. It's funny, I've been thinking a lot about good parenting and talking to people further down the line who are adults and they'll say, the thing that I really struggle with is when I even bring up something that my parents did wrong or that, affected me in a bad way, they'll shut me down and say, oh, great. So now it's all my fault. And and because they feel pain. We hate being blamed for something. And rather than saying, oh yeah, no, I found it really hard. It was a really difficult thing to work out and I didn't do that quite right. Thanks for telling me.
Yes.
And then I'm really sorry you feel that way.
Yeah, exactly.
And being open to that, because I think we really struggle with this sense that we're getting it wrong and then our kids blame us. And,
I did a feedback thing with my kids.
Ooh.
It was so interesting. My twins who are a bit younger, they want to do it, but they wanted to do it in a group. We just haven't got around to doing it yet. But my eldest, who is now 18, he did. I said, "You give me some feedback as a parent."
I love it.
It was so interesting.
I love it.
It was very positive. It was very lovely.
Yes.
But yeah.
I think it's a good thing to do.
It's really good. Yeah. And if you do it with a bit of lightness as well.
Yes.
It was good. It was really enlightening, actually.
So giving them chores can also really, really support this. So I know that it's hard work sometimes when they do give you attitude or they push back or they just don't want to. It's really about starting them down that route of knowing that they can actually take control of their life and they are responsible.
Yeah, and remembering, we've talked about this a few times, isn't it? I remember, nobody wants to do chores.
Of course they don't.
So when they go, no, I don't want to, it's not a personal attack. It's just, I don't want to do the washing.
I don't want to either. And it's got to be done.
Yeah.
What happens as they approach adulthood? So we've got this situation where we get triggered, we get scared, am I a good parent? I want my children to have the best and all these things that we worry about.
And to be honest, a lot of us take our parenting job super seriously. That's really beautiful. And the people listening to this podcast are probably also, otherwise you'd be listening. And we take it seriously. So when those fears are real, they're real.
Very real. And the caretaking will creep up on us. It doesn't. Nobody wakes up and goes, right, I'm going to completely control my child's life. No. You wake up and you think, oh God, am I actually doing that? Yeah. Once you become aware of it.
Yeah, I just want to get over this hurdle and then I'll back off. I just want to get over this hurdle
exactly, and then they'll be fine. Yeah. And then they'll be fine. Yeah. But will they? Yeah. So we suffer conflicting emotions. We can feel anger and frustration at the child's entitlement, but at the same time we're fearful that if we don't give them things then something terrible will happen.
Yes.
So I read a really interesting bit which was talking about emotional buttons and that these are your ATM buttons and that when the child or the teenager or the young adult pushes that button, that's where the stuff that they want comes out.
Oh, that's good.
So being aware is not again, it's not about pointing a finger. It's about saying, okay, now I know that these are my buttons.
Yes.
Then you can be more conscious and think, oh, I've just felt that button being pressed. And that's not necessarily helping anybody here.
Oh, I love that. That's all down to awareness, isn't it?
It's all awareness.
Tension in your body. And another point of awareness, which I think is really important when we're talking about this, is noticing our thoughts.
Yes.
So, when we're having those worrying thoughts about our kids, which we all have. I've had bajillion, if that's even a word.
Bajillion, I like that.
And they are, we have this negative bias that we've also talked about a few times on this podcast. We have a negative bias. It's a survival instinct. So our thoughts are weighted to the negative. So they quickly spiral into, oh my God, my kid's going to be homeless on the street or be, dead in a gutter.
Absolutely.
Within a nanosecond. I'm exaggerating, but you get my point.
No, that's the 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
thinking.
It's sort of stopping. Hang on a minute.
Yes.
Is this thought true, or am I just in a panic spiral?
Yes. So those buttons, I can name a few so that we can help ourselves and think, oh, is that one of my buttons? There's the fear button. So if you worry about your child a lot, you probably do have a fear button.
Yeah.
If you can have a guilt button where you blame yourself for your child's problem. So quite often we see something happening with our child and we just feel terrible about it, but it might not be necessarily things we've done or we're doing, and the guilt won't help us.
Yeah, and that's fear-based too, isn't it? But that's fear of our own ability rather than...
Absolutely. Sympathy, feeling sorry for the child. The child sort of plays on that and goes, oh, it's been so hard for me. I had these issues. So, and then that's very easy to then feel sympathetic towards them. But you don't necessarily help them by feeling sympathy because you're enabling inability.
Yeah, I mean, we can always empathize with them, can't we? Like we relate. Oh, I really understand that you feel that way. That makes total sense to me, and I really think you should do this yourself.
Yes, and my friend summed it up as learnt dependence. That when we feel sympathy for somebody, say they've got a learning difficulty, then there's a tendency to feel sorry for them, and then you just allow things to slide. But what they do is they learn dependence, and then they don't have agency. These buttons are the ones that they'll press because they know that it's an easy way to just get an easier ride. And we all as human beings, we quite like an easy ride. So we're not saying they're bad people, they're just human beings. And eventually if you keep saying, will you do this, or is this going to happen, are you going to go and look for a job, are you going to, and they just are doing, they pressed all the other buttons, eventually they'll expect you to just get worn out and then you'll just give up. So
I think that one's probably quite effective.
It's quite effective. I think it's very effective. And then the last one is intimidation. Some people feel physically intimidated by their child. So the question is, where are you? Know where you are, know what your buttons are, and also just know what your boundaries are. And
question your thoughts.
And you can then change your view. You can then look at it and say, is all this stuff you've been saying, is this real, or is this just fear-based or one of these other buttons that's actually coming up? And how do I create the home I want? So the creating the home you want, particularly when they've got to an older stage and they are now, let's say they're going out and working, but they don't have enough money to really pay bills and things. It's very worthwhile thinking about, well, would I actually give next door neighbours person who came and lived here, would I allow this to happen?
That's an interesting way. I'm not sure I would ever see it that way. I don't know, but I've not been in that situation, but I don't know, maybe I would. Because they will always be a family member, won't they?
They're always going to be your family member. I think I'm just using that as a way of getting a little bit of distance and saying, okay, they're doing this. It feels a bit wrong, like something's not right. How do I deal with this? Well, if it was my neighbour's child, how would I view that situation? And it can be things. And that's about communication. It's about saying, okay, I feel this way about it. Something's not quite right. And how do we communicate?
When a little bit of resentment starts to come up. That's usually when we feel a little bit, oh, why am I doing this kind of thing? And if we don't act upon that, then I think using the neighbour as an example is a good way of distancing ourselves, sort of in theoretically.
Yes, exactly. Because they'll come to you and they'll say, oh, I didn't turn up for work and I just can't be bothered. But you think, well, if that was my neighbour's child, how would I be thinking about that? So I'm just saying clearer. It gives you a chance to step away from it. And, if you're going to sit down with them, it's worth looking at things like what time are they coming in at night? Because you don't want to be the parent, with a curfew. But if they're coming in at 3 a.m, disturbing everyone in the house, you have a right to actually have a good night's sleep, or things like that. So it's just talking about the communication. You're not your child's maid. So what are the requirements if they're going to live in the house? You're going to continue ironing all their clothes, making them breakfast, making them lunch, clearing up after summer. Where are you sitting in
and
terms
again,
of
it's tuning in.
it's
What is
tuning
okay
into
for me?
it.
What is not okay? And there isn't a list that is right or wrong. It's what works for you. Because like the example of someone coming in at 3 a.m. If they're not making a noise and it's not affecting anyone, then who cares?
Who cares?
But it's when it's affecting everybody else or affecting you, then it's a problem, isn't it? It's just picking apart every situation.
If you're going to live in a house with somebody when they're getting older, it's just you can actually look at these things and think, what is causing the imbalance? What is causing slight resentment? How am I feeling? And the problem is you may be saying, oh, well, I love it. I love having my child at home. It's so nice. It's so wonderful. The other question is this actually enabling them to build the skills that they want to live a life that they would like to do?
Or is it just serving you?
Is it just serving you?
And them. It could be,
Could be
both, couldn't it?
So it's just that I think the way I would deal with it is, let's say I had an 18-year-old, like my friend has, who is now going to work in an apprenticeship. I would be very slowly teasing out the things that she could do for herself. So, after a week or so of her being perfectly capable of coping with certain things, I'd give her a little bit more responsibility. And you just slowly, they don't even have to notice it, but you slowly move them on so that they are able to cope, because you don't want them to suddenly have to deal with commuting, deal with having to make their own lunch, deal with all that. It's very tough
at that age. I mean, as we've banged on about many times, the brain isn't quite formed yet, and it's a big deal. So helping them and making that transition nurturing and smooth is really beautiful. But I love the way you talk about just doing little gentle things to kind of show them. And I think as they get older and they get more mature, they are out in the world, whatever they're doing or not doing, they do start to see adults as that we are adults, that we're people, and that we're doing stuff, and it's we're not just the caretakers, the caring people, that we are doing stuff, and that they need to do some of it themselves. I think sometimes that just happens organically.
But coming back to that team thing, you start moving towards being a team. So you're all working together. And that's still a family. That's a very loving family. But it's where you don't have one person having to do everything of one type. If that doesn't suit you. Some people, that's what they want.
And maybe they see siblings still at home and they start to recognise their role differently. It all kind of transitions. Yes.
So there are going to be some bumpy roads ahead. Susie and I are beginning to move out of those early teen years, and we're on to that next stage.
My partner's son, I spoke to him about this very briefly, and he had another category, which was nuclear bomb parenting, which I thought was quite funny.
That's kind of like clearing the entire ground.
Clearing it, and
did everyone die? What happened?
I'm not sure. There weren't specifics, but it was it was big.
Wow.
And has generational effects. I'm not thinking.
Wow.
Don't know if he's suggesting that his parents did that. It was just a different approach.
Wow. Okay, so tell us, if you've met a nuclear bomb parent, I want to hear about it.
Total destruction.
Yes. And like you say, radiation that just continues generation after generation. Well, if you like what you hear, do us a favour, hit the follow button, because it means you won't miss an episode, and it also makes us easier to find for other parents. Is this the stage you're at? Would you like us to talk about an issue you're facing? You can send requests to teenagersuntangled@gmail.com, or come to the website www.teenagersuntangled.com. You can leave a review there, access all the other episodes. We have a blog. Susie can be reached on all social media, and she has her own website with a blog, which
is www.amindful-life.co.uk.
I think that's all. Just remember, you're never alone. You're part of our big parenting community, and we've got your back. Goodbye for now.
Bye for now. And that was from Rachel. Maybe you can help me with the name. Eleni.
Something.
Eleni. I was singing really well. Can we have a blooper section at the end?
I think it's Sidari. Eleni Sidari, I think it is.
Should I do that again?
Yeah. Let me switch my phone off. Eleni, I think it's just
Sidari.
That's just Eleni.
Eleni.
Yeah, so
Eleni
we put it on the website, and if you want to actually check who it is. God, this is going to take a lot of editing. Okay.
We're really on it today.
I'm frazzled.
Both of us. Is that good then? Did I say her name before? No. Okay, shall I do it again? Okay, brilliant. I will.